Have you been running 30 plus miles per week for a while and strength training consistently, but your marathon times are not improving? Do you feel like your body is ready to push the limits, but you're feeling stuck and not anywhere close to getting a PR anytime soon? I have Coach Lou from our Healthy Runner coaching team here with me today, and we are going to take the guesswork and save you countless years being a frustrated runner because you're not shaving time off your marathon. And Coach Lou, I'm super excited to bring you back on the show. Thank you so much for coming on to share all of your knowledge, experience, and wisdom.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, no, this is going to be fun, and this is a topic that I am, constantly learning myself as I'm kind of dipping my toe in some of, the training that we are going to talk about today. So, running friends, have you run a bunch of marathons, but you're not getting any faster? You're just not getting that time that you set for yourself, whether it is, the elusive BQ or it's a PR that you would like to get. Do you feel stuck as a marathoner and you really don't know where to turn because you keep doing the free plans off the internet or the ones that come with the major marathons that you signed up for, but you either get injured or you don't hit your goal time? Do you want to get faster and not get injured during your training so you can cross that finish line after 26.2 miles feeling stronger than ever? If so, then this is the training for you. Coach Lou and I are going to cover marathon training tips to PR or get a PB. And we're going to cover who would benefit from advanced marathon training. What are the 5 keys to advanced marathon training? What is the goal of advanced marathon training? What is the prerequisite that we need before we start this type of training? And then really break down what are the 3 distinct phases of advanced marathon training. And then we're going to educate you on a topic that has been fairly new to me. We're going to talk progression runs and what they are and what phase of marathon training should you be adding these into your program. So, Coach Lou, you know how we do this. Give all the new listeners in our Healthy Runner community a little bit of backstory about yourself and let them know how many marathons you yourself have done personally.
Hello, Coach Lu here. In case you don't know, I'm Coach Lu in the Healthy Runner group. I'm one of the team Spark coaches. I'm a run coach, of course, and I'm a personal trainer and a runner myself. I was born in the southeast of China. The weather is like Florida, humid, hot, so I don't like to run before, other than chasing for the last school bus. If not, I miss it, right? But I didn't like to run.
So that's how
fast
you got so
forward, yeah,
fast, is chasing those school buses.
only a little intervals. Fast forward 2017, I started my first half marathon. And after that, I don't feel too bad, despite a 1,000 feet plus elevation gain. I did my first marathon. And then 3 years later, in 2020, during the pandemic, I get a little more time. I become a run coach. That's when I start officially working with you in the Healthy Runner group. And that's my first time qualify for Boston as well. And I ran my first Boston in 2021 and have been running ever since. I'm gonna run Boston next year. So maybe see some of you next year.
Yeah, so that will be 3 Boston marathons for you within like what, 24 months?
Yes, 2021 and 2022 is only 4 months away because of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've been doing some exceptional things in your running, and we actually, for those who are hopping here on the live in our Healthy Runner Facebook group, shout out to all you guys. Coach Whitney's here, Coach Kat's here,
Hi.
Gene's here. Adam is saying congratulations on Team Ultra Possibilities.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, you just did an amazing run. I guess that, yeah. Do you want to just share what the run was that you did on this past Saturday?
This one. So it's a 95-mile run, 3 people. So it's an ultra team. We did 3 legs. So I did the first leg is 12 miles, and second leg 8 miles, and third leg 16 miles. And that was at 3 p.m. and in the afternoon when it's hot, and we were 10 minutes behind the cutoff time. So we are about to get swept. I don't usually have that experience before.
I bet you don't.
I worked really hard, getting us a little extra minutes. And then both Coach Kat, you're in the same team, and Mike, we worked very hard. We are thinking of the Achilles. We are fundraising for Achilles. Those people with disabilities get back to running. We're thinking of these people. They are facing a lot more challenges than we are facing. So we fought through it. We were the last team made into the cutoff.
Oh my goodness. Wow. But you didn't get swept.
Almost.
Almost, but you did it.
We were
Yeah.
escorted by the sweeping bicycles.
Oh my goodness. Wow, that's pretty amazing though. I can't even imagine, honestly, like now doing a 16-mile run, how hard that is. Like to actually do that after you already ran, would you say an 8 and a 12?
20 miles.
Holy cow. In that same day is just like truly remarkable. Honestly, I'm so proud of you, Mike, and Coach Kat, and all of the awareness that you raised for the cause. Achilles is a fantastic organization. So yeah, congratulations to you. And this past weekend, and I know you've had a lot of marathon successes yourself personally, but I know you've helped so many of our coaching clients this past year hit some of their marathon successes. And I just think about Francisco, who has been on the podcast before, who at age 54 started running to lower his cholesterol, and he was feeling stuck and hitting a plateau, and he was even getting a little bit slower. And like most new runners, he was like doing the same miles every day. He didn't know he should be strength training, and he was stuck and needed some direction. And I know you worked with him personally, and he really went from being stuck to literally qualifying for Boston
He's crushing
at his marathon, and he's continued to make gains, much due to what we're going to be talking about today in today's episode of really how do we get faster for the marathon, and what is the specific training that entails. And I guess I want to preface this conversation with, if this is your first marathon and you are fairly new to running, and you haven't run a bunch of half marathons, you haven't done, we're going to talk about like who this training is for, but if you haven't done a bunch of speed work, then I'm really going to direct you to our previous episode, that Coach Latoya shared some amazing tips for beginner marathon runners, right?
Yes.
And the beginner runner. So if that is you, then you are really not going to want to listen to this specific episode. You're going to want to go back and listen to the episode with Coach Latoya, where she really breaks down what you need to be focusing on for your marathon goals.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess, as myself kind of going through this marathon training that you are, coaching me through, and, seeing some of the training that has been on my plan. And, I know this is a topic that I really wanted to have on the podcast, because this is, kind of that topic that can get people through their sticking point. And I know you're working with many people right now, and that's what your goal is, to get them over this hump, right? Get them over this plateau. And yeah, I'm really excited to kind of, dive into this training, and I'll share some of my personal experience, for myself going through some of this training. But if you can, Coach Lou, can you just share, who is really going to benefit from kind of this advanced marathon training that we're going to talk about?
Say someone who's running consistently a decent month mileage, I would say 35, even 40 miles plus a week without injuries over the last 6 weeks or more. That's what we call consistency. And who has been strength training consistently. I know Coach Latoya mentioned that in the beginning of marathon training. This is also important in the advanced marathon training. It's consistency is key and the strength training is key. And your body is ready to push the limit, mentally prepared. Mental is so important in the training. We don't just train our body, we train our mind as well. For endurance sport, especially. And someone who you can go out tomorrow and run half marathon, no problem. And ideally, not your first marathon. However, if you consistently run 40 plus miles a week, no injuries, a lot of strength training, like Rachel and like Francisco,
Yep.
you may be able to jump into this advanced marathon training.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. So just to make sure that I understood you correctly, we're really talking about the runner that's consistently running like 35 miles per week. They're not injured. They're not feeling aches and pains. And they've done this over a significant, period of time, at minimum 6 weeks. Right. Yes. So they've been doing that for 6 weeks, not like 1 week or 2 weeks. And this is something new, but they've shown they have this body of work that they can run that mileage consistently for that 6-week time period, in addition to actually doing strength training, because this is going to be very protective during this advanced marathon training that we're going to be talking about, protective for your body. And then they're feeling like, hey, my body's ready to push the limits. And actually, Lou, now that you said that, that was what I was feeling, right? Like after my last half marathon, I made my big announcement and like I had my reflection episode of that half marathon. Like I felt like basically what you just said is I felt like my body was, hey, like I did this marathon. I was happy with my, time. I hit my goal. I really pushed my body to the limits, but I feel like I was ready to like finally, right after 5 years, like go back for seconds, for the marathon. And that you're really set up where you could go run a half marathon because your training is such that you've built out that mileage where you can be like, hey, there's a half marathon 2 or 3 weeks from now, and you like can sign up and do it.
No problem.
It's not like going to take you weeks to build up to that half marathon. And ideally, it's not your first marathon. But like you said, there are exceptions to the rule. I think Francisco is an excellent, exception to that rule. And by the way, guys, if you are wondering about, I know we mentioned Francisco before, but Francisco actually shared his in-depth story of how he did qualify for Boston in episode 132 on the Healthy Runner podcast. So I will kind of link that, interview with Francisco in the show notes to this episode. But yeah, I think he was a great example. Then Rachel also, shout out to Rachel. I just love Rachel. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Rachel has been within our community for the better part of over 2 years now, really. And she's just been crushing. Like I remember in the beginning, she only ran 1 half marathon, and then, she got a half marathon PR. Actually, she's been on the podcast as well, way back when in the archives, actually. So for those who have like literally been listening to the podcast forever, Rachel's been on the show. I think she was honestly our first like ever coaching client that shared her story on the podcast. So I'm going to have to link that episode in the show notes as well. But she's a good example of, she's never run a marathon before, but she's doing some exceptional training right now. And yeah, when I see her crushing her runs, that motivates me as well. All right. So that's who would benefit from this advanced marathon training. And again, if you don't meet that criteria, guys, like you're not going to start, jotting down notes from Coach Lou today and being like, ooh, I'm going to add this in. No, because again, like we are concerned about your long-term health. We are all about longevity, lifelong running here at Healthy Runner. So if you don't meet this criteria, you're going to go back, listen to episode 134, where Coach Latoya and I really talked about a 16-week marathon training for beginners. Start there, get some wins under your belt, get a marathon or two under your belt using that type of plan, and then come back and listen to this episode. All right. I just want to really make that clear, guys, because, you see so much information out there on YouTube, on Instagram, right. And like, sometimes we see this content and we're just like, oh, I need to be doing this. I need to be doing this. So Coach Lou and I, we really thought about this because we want to be really clear on this is for a specific runner who's going to be able to implement the strategies we're going to talk about today. Because if you're not there, you are going to wind up getting injured. And we know we are not about that here at Healthy Runner. All right, Lou. So what are the 5 keys to advanced marathon training?
Sort of make it into a Spark.
So Spark has 5 letters, in case you guys were wondering here. So Coach Lou very creatively made this utilizing the letters of Spark. So we're going to talk about S first. And what does the S stand for?
Slow down. Believe or not, you want to run faster, you got to slow down. So common, the beginners run too fast in the easy runs. You may say that, oh, I'm a beginner, or even advanced. When you get just into advanced running, right? If you keep the same pace, you don't get improved. You compare to those like super fast marathoners, you say, oh, I'm slow. It's all relative. Slow down at your easy pace. We talk about RPE all the time. If you're not familiar, a quick reflection is RPE on a scale of 10, 10 being the hardest, 1 being the easiest. Usually easy run should be 4 to 5. Recovery run 3 to 4 even. Marathon pace 6 to 7, for example. So keep the easy run really easy. Fun fact, seasoned runner race way faster in their race pace compared to the normal run pace, while beginner runner essentially have similar pace. For example, take myself for example, I race 6:40 something pace for the marathon, but my easy runs are usually 8:45 or more, so 2 minutes plus slower. However, when I start, all my long runs, easy runs are usually 8 minutes per mile, and my marathon pace 8 minutes per mile. So everything the same. You see that as you become more seasoned runner, the easy run actually gets slower down, 1 minute slower, but the marathon pace gets 1 minute faster. So that's a huge difference. There's this competition with social media, Strava competition. When you see someone's doing a workout, like a fast guy doing a workout, then easy run, like, oh, 9 minutes per mile. So then I say this competition, right? I want to compete. If he can do 9 minutes per mile, I'm going to do that too. If I do every workout he does, and I may do the same marathon, but then it's not, because 9 minutes per mile is easy for him, or she, but it's not for you. You have to find your own easy pace, and you can use RPE or use your coach, listen to your coach, or use a recent race time to determine the easy pace. Eventually is you train at your easy pace. So the other thing is that you train at your easy pace, you can push hard in the hard runs. That's what makes you faster. There's a lot of things, but essentially slow down.
Yeah. And I love how you brought that up first, because, man, like, how much have we talked about that in previous episodes? I feel like, the last, 5 or 10 episodes, we've literally mentioned that with whatever guest that we've had on, with whatever expert we've had on. So this is not just like us talking, and made this up. This stuff is what, the experts are doing. And it's what we've implemented in our own personal training. And I can now say that now that I've officially even slowed down my easy runs even more. And that we work on with our clients. And we see such a difference when our clients do slow these easy runs down. So I love that you brought that up first. And it is such, I talked about that in my, half marathon, like lessons learned episode 128, that was a key to, running the two consistent, like fast half marathons, was that I started doing my easy runs even slower. And so, yeah, you guys have heard it here before. It's not the first time. It probably will not be the last time, if I had to guess. So what is the second key to advanced marathon training? What does the P stand for? The P in Spark?
P, purpose. Everyone has a purpose. You don't go out and just run. Well, if you just go out for a run, that's a purpose itself. You just kill time. However, once you become an advanced runner, you want to maximize the efficiency. So if you just go out and do whatever run, you don't improve. Each run is a purpose, specific purpose to maximize the efficiency. You get improved. Easy runs, back to easy runs. To strengthen your heart muscle, and the heart muscle get a max contraction at 60 to 65% max heart rate. If your heart rate get increased, it just pump faster, but the muscle doesn't get stronger. So you don't really need to go faster than that. And that's RPE 4 to 5 on a scale of 10.
All right. So we have purpose. Yeah. We have purpose for our runs. If we are running easy, like there's a purpose, because we're working on that aerobic base. We're working on, is a specific RPE. But yeah. And then also if we're, running a specific workout, there's a purpose to that workout. It's not like, oh, one day I'm going to do like tempo pace. One day I'm doing interval pace, right? Like this is all purposeful, structured out. Yeah. So that's why as coach, we educate. We don't just give you workout, we educate you. For example, tempo run, usually like what you did today, tempo run, 7-mile tempo. It's not 7 miles, start from tempo and all the way. You have 2 miles warm up. And for you, this is a 4-mile tempo run nonstop. And then 1 mile at the end. Why 4 miles? Because the tempo run should be 20 to 40 minutes. And at your current fitness, 4 miles fit in that 20 to 40 minutes range. So that works. And the 2 miles before is to get your body warm up. So it's ready to take the hard impact of tempo runs. And good example. And that was a really hard workout, by the way, today. That was my first time. For those who didn't catch that, Coach Lou was actually talking about the training run I did this morning, which was the first time that I did do a 4 miles at my threshold pace, or kind of this tempo run. And I really I shared this within one of our communities today about the warm up. I really love, again, my kind of share today was, and I'll share it here, for those who are over 40 years old, start doing your warm-up miles a little bit longer, meaning miles. So typically most plans will say like 1 mile warm-up and then do your tempo run, 1 mile warm-up and then do your interval track workout. I found such a difference in my body and what it's able to produce, and not feeling flat for my first couple of intervals, not feeling flat for the first mile of a tempo run. My muscles feel like they're ready to go, turned on. My joints are a lot more looser. They're not feeling stiff. So for those over 40, I highly recommend, you adding in a mile warm up, and it's not going to wear you out. It's not going to tax you where, oh, now you're running 7 miles versus you would have ran 6 miles if you did 4 miles at tempo pace, because you're running those first 2 miles, like Coach Lou said, easy and slow. Right? It's not going to tax you, but you're going to feel like that much warmed up for the actual purpose, going back to Coach Lou's purpose, P here, of your actual workout for that day. So in winter, you might want add 1 more miles, 3 miles, because when it's sub-zero, right? That's probably what you need to take. Yeah, that makes sense. And you would know when you were training for Boston all last winter in that cold weather, having to do interval workouts. All right. So
Yeah.
what does the A stand for in Spark?
Before we move to A, purpose, there's actually purpose not just for training, it's also for racing. We all get excited by races. Sometimes we have the fear of FOMO. But if you are really going for time, going for maximum efficiency of fitness, you may think twice before signing up for a race. Let's break in the runners into all out run racers. Like you go out a race, you go all out. You don't leave anything behind, which is common. However, that usually means to get the maximum performance, you need a few days of tapering, and after a race, you hurt yourself so bad, so you need a little extra days of recovery. So that breaks your plan for sure. But
Yeah,
it
so
does
there's
have a
purpose
purpose.
of the taper and then the recovery. Okay, perfect.
It does have purpose. It prepare you for the race mindset. Mindset is important to get ready, to get the logistics. And I always recommend a half marathon tune-up run before a marathon because it's very similar setting and it's a good test of the fitness. So it has a purpose. You can go all out for that, but this it will require some modification to your plan. And if you have many races, your plan will be broken. Because you don't have enough time to recover for the next workout. If you just push through it, you injure yourself.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And again, we've talked about that as well as getting too race happy. And I like how you mentioned kind of that tune-up half marathon, which, by the way, mine is coming up in less than 2 weeks now. My tune-up half before the fall. But yeah, there's a purpose to it, right? It serves a purpose. It's a great practice setting for getting in that race mode and practicing all of the race day strategies that we share in our blueprint, and really going through those paces. And just, again, it's like silly, simple things in terms of, what are we doing with our nutrition the day before, right? What are we doing the morning of? How are we grabbing the water? Like, what are we using, right? It's like you get to practice all those things before the big event. And like you said, it's not doing too many of those races. You're not doing like 3 to 5 tune-up races before your marathon. You're picking one, right? And that's kind of your goal, and it has that purpose. Okay, awesome.
Right. You also practice your mind, the mind power that when you race hard. Half marathon is hard enough that the last few miles you feel pretty painful, and you want to push through. It's gonna hurt you a little bit, but if you're an advanced runner, you are not unfamiliar with that kind of pain. It's not like the injury pain, it's the training hard pain. You're gonna endure through that lactate as threshold. You're gonna endure through the hard work. So that's also the purpose. Marathon is just gonna be harder, but if you push from half marathon, it's the closest one you can get.
That's a great point, is that we're not only training our muscles, but we're training our brain to withstand the discomfort that we're going to feel if your goal is, right, again, now we're talking to exactly what the prerequisites were that we talked about. Like, who is this training for? It's for someone who's looking to get a PR, someone to break a plateau, right? They're looking to get faster. There's going to be a lot of discomfort involved in that on race day. It is, right? It's the reality of it. So we need to train our brains to withstand when our brain is telling us, slow down, this is uncomfortable. Like, how do we kind of push through that level of discomfort, not injury, like you mentioned, but we do that in training, and we do that in these purposeful tune-up races as well. So totally agree.
And they're not just, some of the runners are not all out runners. If you're just running for fun, I don't expect that to be very often for advanced runners. But if you're just running for fun, no problem. The very rare type is people with insanely high self-discipline. It's very rare. You can treat the race as a workout. For example, any race over an hour, you can make it as part of the long run, but towards the end, like example here, a half marathon tune-up run. You can add 2 miles in the beginning, which help you to get them run the marathon, half marathon faster, and 1 mile run at the end. So that becomes a 16-mile run. But that is not just for mileage. The 2 miles in the beginning and the 1 mile at the end actually help you get into the race and then help you recovery. So that's a good example of the long run. Or another race that's short, like 10K or less than that, you can treat as it's a tempo run. And that can also be part of a long run or just a workout itself. A tempo run, usually you want to keep the time between 20 to 40 minutes. And that's why I say 10K or less. So that can be a tempo run. With a race setting, it can help you push towards the tempo pace, but you also need a self-discipline to keep you not going over the tempo pace. So that's why I emphasize on this category. You need insanely high self-discipline. So that you can use that as a kind of workout.
I see. Okay. So we're not going all out race effort in that 10K right, where you're taking yourself to a 10 out of 10 effort level, no, right? Because that's not your goal race, no, and that's not part of the training, no, right? There's purpose to it. Okay.
Yes.
All right. What does the A stand for in Spark?
Now we get to A. So A is M. M as a weakness with experience, either from you yourself or from a coach. You analyze. Sometimes you just have to look at the data. You analyze the data and then see your weakness at whether that's speed or is it endurance or muscle imbalance. That's more your expertise, or race prep. That's something we overlook all the time. And refueling, nutrition, right? The shortest board of the barrel is what determined how much water you can hold. So aim at the weakness, and that you actually need experience or guidance.
I love it. I love it. So we're aiming to find the weakness, yes, and either utilizing, our experience of running multiple marathons and knowing like, hey, I am just not good at, speed and running fast at all. I can't do shorter stuff, or I'm just not good at holding that speed, right? For stamina, right? And we'll kind of get into, when we talk about the phases of training, or it is just that preparation. Okay. All right. That makes sense. What does the R stand for in Spark?
Before the R, I have an example for the A.
Actually, Liz. Give us another example. Yeah.
Liz, right?
Yeah.
So she's super talented. She's fast.
And all right, let's just set the stage here. So Liz is a collegiate runner who Coach Lou is working with, who joined our program, who is hitting this plateau in her 5K time. So she was mainly a 5K runner. She's, won multiple local 5Ks, right? Like, top female finisher. She was kind of, right. She's a speedy runner. She's a collegiate, right, athlete. But she was hitting this plateau. Okay. So I'm setting the stage there. So yeah, tell me about, how that applies to this aim for the weakness.
It's really hard for someone who's talented and already fast to get to the next level. So I analyzed her data and I found that she needs a little bit endurance. So her speed is incredible, but the endurance need a little work. So we have a little tempo. We have some 1K repeats with really short recovery time in between, and that pushed her an endurance VO2 max to a next level. And now actually her easy run gets slower too. So she's now a super experienced runner, and her 5K PR by 30 seconds. That's incredible.
Yeah, and she even didn't she PR her 10K race as well?
Almost a minute.
Wow. Yeah.
She start at 18:10, so that's already pretty fast for a woman, especially. Now she's running 17:47. That's pretty amazing.
That is. And I remember it took a little while for her to kind of buy into the whole slow down those easy runs, right? It took
Yes,
weeks for her
yes,
to like figure that out and realize that. And then I remember when you were adding in some of those longer type endurance stuff,
yes.
it got hard for her because you
It was
kind of
hard.
found that weakness, right? In the training. Okay. So that's one of these kind of key principles to, advanced marathon training is finding, that specific or aiming at the weakness,
Yes,
and then tailoring the training to that weakness. Okay.
yes.
What does the R stand for?
Recovery. You need to recover. We have this conception that you train hard, 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 and you get fast, fast, faster. However, it's not the case. Training just give you stimuli, and you actually get faster during the recovery. If your recovery cannot keep up with your training, you get injured. Recovery is the key. So there's something actually called recoverability, right? The recoverability, like how fast you can recover, determines it's the upper limit of your training. If you have poor sleep, if you have busy days, stressful work, and poor nutrition, you just cannot recover fast enough. So you probably should not go to like 100 miles per week, like the elites do, because elites, they usually that's their only job. They have a team that working for them. So their recoverability is super high. They can deal with that with no problem. But most of us are just normal runners. Every day we have all our own job. So you want to recover. The recoverability is not as high. So your training should be adapt to it. It shouldn't be over the recoverability.
Yeah. So the recovery is super important. It's part of the training.
Yes.
As I put in my comment box today on my training plan to Coach Lou, after my run today, I commented on how hard it was, and I pushed myself, and I knew that I needed to really recover. So I made sure I fueled right after with carbs and protein, like everything that Brooke talked about in her marathon nutrition episode. I made sure I even wore my compression socks under my pants today for work.
Yes.
And, I made sure that I wasn't on my feet all day long today. I was taking some
Mhm.
nice sitting breaks, but continuing to move around, staying hydrated as I have my water right here and electrolytes,
Nice.
right? So it is part of the training. And I knew that because I know if I don't recover, I'm not going to be able to hit this hard 18-mile with spice that you have on my plan later this
That's
week, right?
that's the hardest run ever for you during your training cycle. It's gonna be harder than the 20 miles that's coming.
I know
It's
you
gonna,
said that. I'll let you
yep.
know. But I knew, right? Like I prioritized, guys, my recovery. And it's going to be super important for those who are listening to this, when this is released on the podcast and on YouTube. The next episode on the podcast and on YouTube is going to be episode 140, in which Amy Ongera really shared some great self-care tips for runners that I've started implementing and have been like, honestly, game changers so far. So prioritizing the sleep is definitely been one of my weaknesses for the
Mhm.
past decade. But I've noticed some serious improvements when I do prioritize that sleep and getting consistent with prioritizing it. So yeah, recovery, I would say, is super important. You can't burn the candle at both ends and expect to get a marathon PR or expect to get faster in your marathon if you're burning the candle on both ends. And like Coach Lou said, that's, not only like your physical recovery, but your mental recovery, your stress levels, your
Stress.
work life, right? Like everything. If you have a lot of stress going on at home, a lot of stress going on at work, a lot of deadlines, things like that, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to get faster in the marathon. So I love
Right.
that recovery is a part of one of these key principles. And then lastly, last key principles for 5 keys to advanced marathon training. And this is really kind of setting like your overall framework, like what
Yeah.
are the keys or the pillars, if you will,
Yeah.
of advanced marathon training. What's the last one? What does K stand for?
Okay, I changed a little bit. Consistency.
Consistency with a
But
K.
consistency is a key. So it has a key
Oh,
K
I like
there,
that.
right?
I
It's a
like
K.
that.
So it can be a key. Well, what's the main difference between a novice and seasoned marathon runner? Consistency. Well, there are some fluctuations during the training. The seasoned runners keep a good base mileage or average, whatever it is, all over the year. There will be some period like more intense period or less intense period, but the average is about the same. In the off season, you just train a little less mileage and less speed work, but you still keep it going, keep it moving. So your body, just like a car, you keep it running, you keep it maintaining, you keep it maintained and ready to go, so that you don't really need a long base building, because essentially your base is always there. Then you can just jump into the training program. So you are ready, and you are ready to come. By keeping that, it's low stress, and your body is ready to take the hard impact that's coming.
Yeah. So being consistent with that running, with your base mileage, yeah, all year long. And that's why we said, you've been doing that for at least more than 6 weeks, right? As kind of the prerequisite is you have to be consistent. You can't just sign up for a race without running for months, or without having that, steady body of work for months, and then expect to run a fast marathon or expect to get a PR or a BQ, right? It's not going to happen. You have to be consistent before you really started advanced marathon training. And then you definitely need to be consistent during, right?
Yeah, even for you, right? You spend so much time, even for your half marathon training, the one before this full marathon training, you feel ready this time because you spend a lot of time base building.
Yep. Yeah.
And
That was all
make it
last winter.
consistent a long time. And there's not too many crazy long runs with spice, right? Or those speed work, but you keep the mileage, you keep it going. Sometimes you add a little strides and some speed work, but it's not too much. Just really just keep it going, keep it maintaining. And so the body is in check, it's ready to go. There's an exception, like really high performing athletes, because then you're gonna really beaten up your body so hard. So you do need some planned break, but that's like very rare.
Right. But after that planned break, you're
You go
getting
back
back
to
into
it.
consistent running. Right. They're not
Yes.
taking like 3 months off or anything, right?
No.
We're talking a couple of weeks, right?
Right.
Okay.
3
Perfect.
months,
And then
more like injuries.
consistent with not only the running, but also the strength training, right? To kind of remain
Yes.
injury free. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So let's kind of get into some specifics here. So we are going to get into kind of 3 different distinct phases of advanced marathon training. But before we do that, what is our goal, right? Like, what are we trying to achieve by doing this type of plan, that contains these 3 phases?
The goal is very simple. You want to run a fast marathon. So hold a fast marathon pace for 26.2 miles. That's it. That's everything else.
It's so
we base
simple.
on this. Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So if you want to run a fast marathon, you need to, and Lou, we were joking about this, right? We were making it sound simple, but you need to learn what this marathon pace is.
Right.
So now we're really talking about a specific pace, which we really haven't, done too much of a deep dive. We've talked about it in some of your previous episodes, but not as in depth as we're going to get into today. We need to teach our bodies to be able to run at this marathon pace for extended periods of time, not only 1 mile or 2 miles or 3 miles, right? Because for the marathon, you're going to be doing it for 26.2 miles.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And I want to emphasize that you don't just use arbitrary marathon pace or your goal pace. You use what you actually add. it's so common. More often than not, you say, "Oh, I want to run a sub 4 marathon." So the marathon pace is 9:09 per mile. So then all the marathon train pace, you just grab that plan from the internet. There's MP there, so you just run at 9 minutes and 9 seconds. That's not how it works. Well, at least not how it works most efficiently for you. You should be training at your current fitness. It may be 9:30, it may be 8:30, right? So you run a recent race and you test it, like the 5K or something. If it's a half marathon, that's better. So you use that to predict your recent race that you just ran to see how your fitness at. You don't use like a PR from 10 years ago when you're super fast and then before family and things, right? You use your current race, your current fitness for your marathon pace to start with.
I feel like you were like judging me there. No, I'm just kidding. I was a lot faster
We all
before.
have that. Right? You'll get back to it.
Yes, yes. And no, great point about current running fitness, not goal, that we're not just, shooting in the dark and yeah, I know it may seem simple, but many people do this and they're like, I want to run, like you just said, they set that goal and they're like, oh, this is what I need to do in the paces when I'm training and I will hit that. And the reason why that doesn't work, in case you haven't wrapped your head around this yet, is if you go at that pace and it's really not your marathon pace, then you're either training too fast than you should. So now you're actually doing threshold pace, right? Or tempo runs instead of marathon pace. So going back to kind of that key of purpose that you mentioned before, or who knows, it could be slower than what your current level of fitness is. So you're not actually going to take your body to the challenge that it does need, because you're just doing it based upon goal time instead of what your running fitness is at right now. So just trying to make that clear.
Not just for you, for me too. I got COVID a month ago, so my marathon pace just dropped by 1 minute per mile. If I just, I said 7 minutes per mile is my marathon pace, I just trained at that. I can't do that. It's my tempo pace, or even be faster than my tempo pace. I can't do that. I may be able to push it, but then it's gonna be overtraining.
Yeah. No, good example.
8 minutes per mile.
Yeah, good example for those that have battled, getting COVID. We've had many of our athletes in our community, that's a great real-time example right now. And if you're listening to this episode in 5-10 years from now, hopefully we're not still talking about COVID as an example. Maybe it's a injury or it's a new thing that's out there that's making us sick. But yeah, you have to adjust based upon injuries, sickness, all of those variables. So kind of what is our kind of prerequisite for, starting this, advanced marathon training? Before we talked about like, who is it for, but, just to reiterate, like, what's the prerequisite? If someone wanted to work with you, Coach Lou, and he's like, hey, I heard your episode and I'm ready for the challenge. Like, I have a marathon in whatever, 16 weeks away, 20 weeks away. Like, let's do advanced marathon training. Before you actually program that for someone, because we don't just do that because someone wants to do it, right? We need to make sure it's right. So what's the prerequisite that you would actually implement this training?
I will always look at the training history, especially if you can provide me this last 6 months, 6 weeks. Well, if you can give me 6 months, it's even better, but 6 weeks at least. I want to see that you have consistent mileage, as we said, 35 plus miles per week, no injuries. And you've been doing strength training consistently. That's also the key. Even in the beginning around marathons, strength training is just so important. And you have the base, you run consistently, and then you should be ready.
Yeah, and also I know you had mentioned too that you've tested your speed a little bit, right? So you've done like some track work before and you responded well. You didn't wind up hurting your Achilles, right? Straining your
Right.
hamstring, getting runner's knee, right? Like
Right.
you're able to tolerate, some speed work. You've kind of
Some stress.
dipped your toe, in the waters of stressing your body, and
Yes.
you've remained healthy along the way. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So I'm excited to kind of break this down now. Let's break this down into kind of like three parts in three different phases of advanced marathon training. So we're ready to start. We're ready to get going. We're in phase one. This is about the first third of the training. How long does this last? First off, in general, sense, maybe number of weeks or something. And then, what's our goal during this time period? And like, what are we actually doing for training?
Good question. Let's take 18-week plan, for example. It's a very common 18 weeks for marathon training. So 18 weeks divided by 6. First 6 weeks, roughly the main focus. I mean, you'll be doing a little tempo and things, but the focus will be speed work. It's very far from the marathon, and speed work, you want to improve that early in the training, so you have a little tolerance for injury. And then your endurance will follow. So you do a lot of speed work, track work, pure speed. And for collegiate athletes, you may actually keep that even longer, because for us, unfortunately, when we get older, the speed is losing. So when you're younger, you want to keep doing speed work a little longer before you go into endurance. So first 6 weeks, you're gonna focus on speed. It also depends, right? I mean, if you are already very good at speed, you just want to improve on endurance, it will be a different story. But in general, first third of the 18 weeks, 6 weeks, you want to do speed work and a lot of track work. The point of speed work is there are twofold. Really short speed work, like 200 meter, 100 meter, it's really to give you essentially strides to improve your running economy. So almost anaerobic. So including your that improves your cadence and running economy.
Yeah, and helps that running form, right?
Yes.
Just doing those strides and making you more efficient as a runner. Okay.
Right. Yeah, by the way, usually for the advanced marathoners, your cadence should be at least 160 plus strides per minute. Ideally, there's a magic number 180, but I think there's a leeway 170 to 180 are all fine. But if you are below 160, usually there are some issues. It's better you go to a PT to analyze your form and something. There's maybe some muscle imbalance or something you want to change before you go into the advanced program.
Yeah. So good point there too, is that, your running form is doing, ideally, again, does everyone need perfect running form to be fast? No. And we know that, and there's some debate there, but, I think most of the PT experts that I've had on, the show before, all of us kind of agree that if we can be more efficient at our form, it is going to be protective in nature, when we're doing these hard workouts that you're going to be talking about, that it will help keep your body healthy as you're really building up that level of stress, because it is a matter of building up stress, but not break. So your body can actually get faster and peak in your training to get that fast marathon race, right? And it is that fine balance, right? And finding, and you don't want to kind of like go over that tipping point, and it's finding that balance. But I like how you had mentioned that, and so your focus in this first phase is, definitely more of the track, workouts, and even the shorter stuff. Like I was surprised actually at, when you had programmed me like repeat 400s. And, we did a whole episode for those who really aren't familiar with, track speed workouts, and maybe, this is your fifth marathon and you've really been focusing on just your long runs, or trying to like speed up your easy runs, thinking you would get faster for the marathon. And like, hopefully we've already taught you something today. And maybe you're new to, speed work. Coach Lou actually did a really, really informative episode on how to run an interval run, and like, what do you like? It was like everything, details, basics, like how are you going to, track when you're on the track? How many laps? Like we got into all that, repeat 400s versus 800s and so on. So we'll definitely link that episode as well, because that is a key focus kind of during this first phase of advanced marathon training.
Right. And yes, so we have there's a lot of things you want to focus on that in the episode. You want to use manual labs, so on and so forth. But for today's, we talk about the anaerobic track work, but there's somewhat aerobic track work too. That's why you have this 400 with 400 recovery, or when we have more reps, you start to see I have 400 speed work and then only 200-meter recovery. And I want you to run during that 200 rather than stop, because the whole point is to keep your heart rate high. If you completely stop, then you need a little more time. The next rep, you need a little more time for the heart rate to go into that zone, and then you drop back. So it's less efficient. You want to keep aerobic, so you want to jog in between.
And that helps our VO2 max, correct?
That's not for VO2 max, is mostly from tempo, but this is for what's that called? It's the type 4 of the run. It's a little higher than VO2 max, something different.
Okay.
Lactate threshold.
Okay.
It's slightly different. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not allowing that full recovery in between.
Sorry. This is for VO2 max. Yeah. This is for VO2. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not allowing that full recovery between the laps. And that was actually the mistake I was making, actually, before you educated me on that episode. And for those listening to the podcast, by the way, that's episode 115 on the podcast. And I remember you shared that, and that was like new to me. And I was like, "Ooh, really? Ooh, I've been doing this wrong. I've been like resting too much in between my intervals." And I remember since then, that has been definitely makes it harder, the workouts. But I do think that it had an effect from a training standpoint and conditioning standpoint, and fitness level, that it did keep it aerobic, right? It started working the aerobic system, which obviously for the marathon, again, like we need to be able to hold that marathon pace for a long time, right? So that would be especially important for someone in this first phase of advanced marathon training, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It all go back to the purpose. There's actually a different way you can actually walk between the 400s, but that's more for the speed again. So that's for different purpose. Two different type of training, two different purposes. If you walk in between or if you jog in between, totally different.
Okay, got it. All right, so that's the main focus of the first third of the training. Anything else you want to add to that before we go to phase 2?
That's it. The key point of that is if your speed is faster, like if you can run, if your body is ready to go fast, right? And then you go to some hard workout, it will feel easier. Like your absolute speed is faster. Like you're driving a Lamborghini and then you are stuck in traffic, that will feel super easy. Or you go to a regular freeway under the speed limit, you'll feel easy. But if you're having an old car that's barely moving, then you push to the limit, it will feel different, right? So your absolute speed is there. That gives you such a big cushion for you to work. That actually gives you the upper limit for your tempo run, essentially.
Okay, got it. All right. So then phase 2. So approximately you had mentioned like someone's doing an 18-week, marathon plan. Now we're talking week 7 through 12 approximately. I'm sure there's definitely some carryover depending upon the individual and depending upon what the aim was, right? Those weaknesses we talked about. But what is the second third of the training, focus on? Where is, the mindset and the purpose of this portion of the training?
The main purpose is to focus on the endurance, the tempo runs a lot. The first one, you build up the the speed, so you have a lot of cushion for the tempo pace to move faster. And you see that, and this is where you see all the success are coming. Go back to Francisco. His tempo pace used to be 7:55, 8, and then his tempo pace now is 6:50. That's whole 1 minute faster.
Wow.
And yeah, so with this improve in the tempo, that directly related to the marathon pace. If your tempo runs 1 minute faster, your marathon pace is about a minute faster as well. So I expect to see that kind of improvement in his next marathon.
So
And
wait, let me
usually,
just, because you said that so quick, and I know your brain processed that real quick, but I'm
Mhm,
sure many of the listeners didn't catch what you just said, is that what Coach Lou said is if we can improve the tempo
mhm,
pace,
mhm.
then ultimately the marathon pace is going to improve, which
Yeah,
means you're going to run a faster marathon on race
yes.
day, right? So focusing on your tempo runs and
Mhm,
this threshold piece, like being able to hold that and training
mhm.
in that during the second phase is kind of something that you've identified as a key.
Yeah, that goes back to the purpose. To run a fast marathon, you want to run a fast marathon pace. To have a fast marathon pace, you want to run at a pace that's faster than your current marathon pace, which is tempo. And
Mm.
if you start at the marathon pace, it's not uncommon that people come in with this marathon pace, and through training, their marathon pace get as fast as their tempo pace, like the previous tempo pace. For example, Francisco, again, when he starts, his tempo pace was 7:30-ish. No, his tempo pace was 8. Sorry, his tempo pace was 8 minutes per mile. So his marathon pace, of course, is slower than that. But through training, his marathon pace currently is a tempo pace, is 8 minutes per mile. You see that the marathon pace get dragged into the tempo pace. That's why you start at your current finish. You get your marathon pace, you get tempo pace there. You train at faster than marathon pace, so you drag towards the marathon, the tempo pace. That goes back to why I don't want people to run easy, run too easy, because many people run their easy, run too easy. As we said, RPE level, go back to it. 6 to 7 is a marathon pace. Easy run 4 to 5. So that you see they're pretty close. If you run your easy run too fast, that goes to the gray zone 5 to 6, just below the marathon pace. What ends up that your marathon pace and easy run get mixed up because the body doesn't know the it's about the same pace zone. You're running it, the body say, oh, I just get used to this pace. And as slower your marathon pace, you just get slower.
Mm. Yeah. And I think you accidentally misspoke. So I just want to be clear. In the beginning, Coach Lou was saying that's why he doesn't want his runners running in their easy runs too fast. Not
Right.
that he doesn't want them running too slow. He actually wants them running slower because if they've run them too fast, he's saying you get into this gray zone where you're pretty much running them at marathon pace. And that almost brings down your marathon pace where it's slowing it down. And Coach Lou is saying during the second phase of training, we actually want to work at implementing and mastering, right, these tempo runs at this threshold pace, which will actually bring up the marathon pace, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
And
Okay. That
and
makes
you
sense.
and you are seeing the success everywhere.
Yeah. And I think Francisco's a great example. As I say, like when I grow up, I want to be like Francisco. But I've seen that improvement too. Like I remember my tempo pace when we started working together over a year ago now was 7:50, and then it was
Yes.
7:45 for a while. And now this morning for that first ever 4 miles at tempo pace, that was at 7:30. So, training works if it's kind of implemented in a structured fashion and you can see those paces do start to come down. So hopefully, right, fingers crossed, that my training, my body is becoming more efficient at building out this endurance. So I've gotten faster at that tempo pace, which means my marathon pace now has gotten a little faster. So
Yes,
hopefully I will run a faster marathon, right? That's kind of the
you
whole
will.
goal. And going back to our initial reason for sharing this training with you guys, and why you wanted to tune in to begin with, right? Was to get faster
Mhm.
for the marathon.
Yes.
So these are key runs during this phase. Now,
Hmm.
kind of question to you, because I do see some plans out there, or I see some runners who are only running 4 to 5 times per week.
Hmm.
When I say only, I don't mean that as a negative, because that might work for some people, but they're running 4 to 5, times per week, and they're doing in their weekly training, they're doing a
Hmm.
tempo day, they're doing a
Hmm.
long run day, definitely, and they're doing a track day. Would you recommend that? Do you do that for someone in the second phase, or are you more of a proponent of really focusing, like, hey, track days were in the beginning of that first phase, like that first 6 weeks, and now we're shifting focus in the second phase, that we're going to do essentially two quality runs, meaning like a
Hmm.
faster run, the tempo
Right.
run, and then a long run. Is that what I'm hearing, or do you wind up adding in track as well, or does it depend? Or you can talk about, when that would.
That that's a great point. Yes. I'll say just no more than two quality section per week. Otherwise, our body just doesn't recover fast enough. Unless, of course, if you are recoverability, right? If you can recover that much, for sure, you can have three quality section. But usually, our body will burn out. So usually two sections. You so you only have one tempo section and one long run. However, every once in a while, I may mix in some track work just to let the body get the memory back of some speed. But the main focus will be tempo in the second phase. You may have some track work just to bring that speed back for a little bit. So you
Oh,
switch between, but not just add it. It's just too much for the body.
all right. So from what I heard from that is like, hey, if
Mhm.
you're in your 20s, you're in your teens, you're in your 20s, maybe even young 30s, and you got some great recoverability, you can
Yeah.
recover. You're not like on your feet, like, all day long. You don't have really stressful, work, personal life. You have time to recover. You don't have like
Yeah.
4 kids that you're taking care of, right?
Yeah.
You have the time that you can recover, then that may work. But I would say
Yes.
the majority of people probably listening to this are going to be more in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they most likely got a lot of other things that they're juggling. They're busy, right? We're all
Mhm.
busy. Maybe you have kids, you don't have kids, you got like nieces, nephews, you got dogs, you got like stuff going on, right? You got
I
a
know.
very busy, job. You're running some company, you're an entrepreneur, right? Like there are things going on in your life where you should keep this down to two quality sessions. And honestly, this is where I was most surprised. I'm going to be honest with you,
Mm.
as we started working together during this marathon training cycle.
Mhm.
Um, is I was surprised at, hey, I'm only doing two. Like I just thought and again, I'm sure I'm not the only one, right? There's going to be people who are listening to this who think,
Mhm.
oh, I'm going to step up my game to get faster in my marathon. That means I got to train harder, right? That means I got to do like a track day, a tempo day,
Mhm.
a long run. And I think that's where runners make the mistake of
Mhm.
either number one, getting injured, and then they just say, oh, my body's not meant to run marathons. I can't marathon train. I can't get faster, right?
Mhm.
Or they're not getting faster because they're just getting burnt out and they don't have the energy to actually put in the effort for those quality runs. So now they're
Right.
hitting below where they should, and they're not getting those amazing benefits that we get from the
Mhm.
training, right? Remember, it's the training that creates the body and
Mhm.
the ability to perform on race day. And
Right.
I think that's such a key point. And it was something that was really eye opening for me, honestly, when I started, looking at the plan and as we've been working and modifying, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. But honestly, like, knock on some wood here. I think I am officially, what do we got? 6 weeks. I'm like 10 weeks in. So I'm like right
Mm-hmm.
in this phase of what you're talking about. I'm kind of coming toward the end of the
Mm-hmm.
second phase of the training.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really, seeing the benefit again, knock on wood. Like I'm surprised at how well marathon training has been
Yes.
going. And
Mm-hmm.
how, it's not like this totally different experience for me than trying to do advanced half marathon training. And I think it really speaks to the prerequisites you mentioned before,
Mm-hmm.
and your principles of really focusing on the recovery
Yes.
and like that base building and
Mm-hmm.
the focus. I love that you're so intentional on what is the purpose and the focus of like these different phases.
Yep.
And hey, I'm seeing the benefits of that personally, and I know there's been many who have seen those benefits as well in our program.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to kind of reiterate that, because yeah, it's something that again, I didn't even honestly, think about much. Anything else that that we didn't talk about during the second phase of the training?
I think that's pretty much it. You just train at a faster than your current marathon pace, so you bring that faster and faster. The other things that all these pace are dynamic, right? As we have, that's why we have deep dive course. That's why I analyze your data and I see, oh, that I check with your RPE as well. I want to make sure that you don't overdo it. You may hit the pace, but if that effort is higher than you need to be, that's not good. Or is that too easy? And I adjust it. As you see that in our one of our course, I say, oh, I just update your paces.
Yes. Yeah.
So
And so what Coach Lou is saying, within our kind of one-on-one high touch coaching program is
mhm,
we do these deep dive Zoom calls, and yeah, he is like analyzing, the workouts that you're doing and seeing and making sure the RPE is there. So, and that's another great point that you bring up, because I feel like, many of our athletes want to impress the coach, right?
yeah.
And they're like, ooh, he said my pace is 7:30. So let me try to beat that, right? To like impress him. Like if I thought about this today, honestly, as I was going, because
Mhm,
I was getting like so pumped up for this run today, because mentally I knew this was going to be like a big milestone for me. I've never done 4
mhm,
straight miles at tempo pace without having to walk and like catch my breath, or, have a rest interval in between. I was really like, getting my mental mindset, getting pumped up. It was like, getting charged up.
mhm.
And I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm going to actually maybe even run this a little faster. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, wait, Duane, like, no, you're an idiot. Like, would you ever tell your client that? It's like, I need to think about that RPE that you mentioned. And I even commented this in my comments after my workout. I said, like, the last half mile, I was getting
Mhm.
up to that 9, but the majority of it was a 7 to an 8 out of 10. I
That's good.
wasn't feeling like how I feel after some of the hard track stuff that we did in phase 1, and I
Mhm,
wasn't feeling like how I feel on race day at the end of a half marathon, right? Like I
mhm.
wasn't at that 9-10, like when you're really pushing the limits.
Right.
And so I did hold back a little bit, because I honestly wanted to go in like just to see like, hey, on this last half mile, like, can you do a 7-minute pace? Like, go ahead and try, Duane. Like,
Mhm,
so I just share my story because I know there's many of you who are probably
mhm.
thinking the same sometimes when you're out there for a workout. And I think you need to keep in mind that training is training and
Yeah.
racing is racing. Like, you don't want to race in your training.
Mhm,
You got to save it for race day and think about the purpose of the run. So I just wanted to share, my experience with that, because I think it's a great point that you brought up, the RPE
mhm,
level and how
mhm,
you adjust our
mhm,
paces as athletes based
mhm.
upon, what we are running and what the
Right.
RPE is. So like if I told you in those comments and I said, Coach Lou, like I was able to do 7:30 for 4 miles,
Mhm.
RPE was probably like 7. I'm
Oh,
sure
that's
you would probably say to me like, hey, that was right where it was. Maybe we'll do like,
mhm.
the next run, we'll see how you feel. Or, hey, now your tempo pace is 7:25, right? Or
Yep.
it would be right. Like
Yep.
that's how it would go. So just to put the, some numbers behind the principles that Coach Lou is talking about, guys. All right. So now we're down to phase 3 here, right? We're getting close. We're getting close to the big race day.
Yeah.
We're on the back end of the training, the last third. So maybe we're in like weeks 13 to 18 of this, advanced marathon training. What's the goal here, Coach Lou?
It's a final countdown. So now your speed is there, and speed help you improve the tempo pace. Now your marathon pace go with the tempo pace. You probably already see that the marathon pace has increased so far. Now the goal focus to hold this newly gained marathon pace long. In the training, you don't have to hold that for 26.2 miles. However, you want to hold it usually 10 to 12 miles. If you can hold the marathon pace for 10 to 12 miles, because that's in your peak week, your body are tired. And with tapering and things, on the race day, with all the support, with the rest, you should be able to run the whole thing 26.2 miles at that newly gained marathon pace. So in this final countdown phase 3, you focus in a lot of marathon pace running. A typical workout I usually give to my athletes are this 3-mile marathon pace, 1 mile easy, and then repeat 3 times. Why 3 miles? Because it's usually 3 miles above 5K. And in our mind, right, 5K is like usually the shortest distance we compete as an endurance athlete. So if you say, oh, I can always do a 5K at a marathon pace. If you do a 5K at marathon pace, it feels easy. So, and then especially you have a 1 mile easy recovery after that. And repeat that 3 times, you get 9 miles marathon pace there. That's pretty good. And then I reduce the stop a little bit. I may add a tempo at the end. So you learn to run faster when your legs are tired. But the main focus in the marathon pace, eventually we'll have a long marathon pace run. That's why when a tune-up race may come in, you may just run a 10 to 12 miles marathon pace run, of course, as part of a long run, or run it as a half marathon pace run. So half marathon pace will be 20-ish seconds faster than the marathon pace. So that's not exactly the marathon pace. However, that's a good practice race. If you run the tune-up race, half marathon tune-up race, you practice all the same thing, that fueling and pushing, and the pacing starts slow and then go faster towards the end. And you also give some confidence, right?
Absolutely.
You also
I can speak to that for sure.
You get some realistic goal for your marathon as well. So that's why I would usually say, instead of doing 10 to 12 miles marathon pace, you just go to run the half marathon. Yep. And that's a pretty good prediction of your real marathon workout.
Yeah. And for those that follow Coach Lou and I on Instagram or within our Healthy Runner Facebook group, you'll see, posts that we talk about long runs with spice, where we add some sparks in there. This is what he's talking about, is that you're not just going out there for 16 miles for a long run, because again, this is not marathon training for beginners, right? If it was, then yes, that is completely appropriate and you're not doing anything wrong. So again, if you're listening at this stage of the game to this training, you are in the category we talked about and you've classified yourself appropriately. And you're adding in, you're not only going out there for 16, but we're starting to learn what it feels like to run at marathon pace, like you will for race day, but we're not doing it for the whole run, right? So Coach Lou's basically adding in these rest breaks. So it turns into a technical tempo run, but the paces that you're running are not threshold pace. It is marathon pace. And yeah, that 16 miler that you gave me, and you were right, by the way, that it was harder than the 18 miler. But I'll tell you, like mentally, man, those miles flew by because again, I was just focused on, I want to say you gave me like 4 miles at easy pace to start.
Mhm.
It was like, okay, I'm warming up 4 easy, slow miles, right? And then it
Yeah.
was like, okay, Duane, focus on 3 miles. You're basically, it almost like felt like a track workout to me, where I
Mm.
was like, I'm basically doing 3 intervals of this marathon pace running, and they're just
Mhm.
each 3 miles each. So it just
Right.
really helped me like break up this like big number in my mind, because I only ran 16 the week prior. That
Right.
16 miles is a long distance to be out there. It helped me
Right.
break it up to be like, oh, the workout is actually doing marathon pace for 3 miles. Repeat
Mhm.
it 3 times, Duane. So just get your head, focus on your first interval, and then make sure you're recovering, running nice and
Right.
slow during that easy mile. And
Mhm.
then boom, hit the second one. And then boom, hit the third one. And then even those last couple of miles of easy pace at the end, we're like, oh, the workout's done. I'm just going to run home. And, it made the 16 miles actually like fly by.
Nice.
It made it fly by. So that's the other benefit that I've noticed to these kind of long runs with some spice is it
Mhm.
does make those long runs not seem so long, and you're just out there slugging away,
Right.
just getting in the miles itself, that it really does add that cognitive stimulus, to make it more enjoyable, more fun, and
That's
more of a
good.
challenge, right? And if you're in advanced marathon training, like you want to challenge because you're challenging yourself to get faster for the
Mhm.
actual race. So I think those, I've noticed that for your athletes that you've implemented that in, and obviously, the end result, who knows what my marathon, will result in, because you never know, right, on race day, but process
Mhm.
goal wise, and I'm following the process, I've
Very
definitely
good.
noticed significant differences, with implementing those types of runs,
Mhm.
into the plan. So it's a matter of this last third of training is now
Mhm.
really honing in on that marathon pace and really getting your
Yeah.
body to like know what that pace is, right? That you're going to
Right.
be running on race day.
That's one. Yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is with this long run spice, because the long run are the closest to the actual race, right? So that's why sometimes I add the tempo at the end just to mimic that the fatigue at the end, and you try to hold out the pace. So yeah, so the long run with spice make it a lot of fun, but also it mimic the race setting that you are running fast on a tired leg, and that's something that progression run can work in. It just make it a little fun, a little fun, more fun, right? And yeah, what does it matter too much if you change like 10 seconds every mile, every or every 3 mile, every 4 mile? Does it matter to that much? Not so much. However, it, it make it a little fun. It will help you control your speed. It will help you learn to pace yourself, not to start too fast, because then you just cannot improve it. You cannot go faster. Then you have to start slower and then keep going faster, faster, faster. So
Yeah.
that make it
So
a little more fun.
let me just stop you there, because you had mentioned progression run, and I
Mhm.
know this was something that was honestly fairly a new concept to myself, that really I've done. And as we start learning more about how to run and training, and your easy run, your long run, and now we got these intervals and these tempo runs. But what is a progression run? If no one's ever heard of that before, what are we actually doing during this progression run?
Progression run is that you increase your pace every a few miles. It can be 1 mile and 2 mile, 3 mile, whatever. It's going faster, faster, faster. You start slower and end up faster. If you look at Strava, right, the the slower it is, the shorter or longer the probably
The
longer
bar
the
chart
bar
is,
is.
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
you see the bar is going nicely. You have
Right.
shortened, right? So sometimes you have a OCD, right? You want to go like 5 seconds faster each mile and just make it a little more fun. I remember one time I was doing 18 miles and I was pretty bored. So I just tried to run like 3 seconds faster each mile. It just
Wow. That's gotta be so hard though, honestly. Like that was hard. I just did the run that you had programmed for me last week of 10 seconds faster. And I must say, that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So I can't even imagine trying to hone down on 3 seconds.
it's
Holy
hard.
cow. Like you have to be so in tune to your body. And is that the goal of these progression runs, is really getting so in tune to your body that you can sense like what your pace is and know
It
how to
helps.
adjust without even really technically looking at your watch? It's like, you know what a certain pace feels like to your body.
It helps, but I don't born that way. So I look at my watch constantly to get into that OCD and to get that the pace that I desired. But then after doing this progression run over and over again, then I go out and I run with people. Sometimes the GPS is not that accurate,
Mm-hmm.
and they say, "Oh, I'm running too slow." They speed up and say, "No, no, no, this is too fast." Why?
Right.
Because I know how it feels at this particular pace.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
get the
And
mind
that's,
body connection.
yeah. And so with this type of run, I guess, first off, how many times a week would you ever have someone do a progression run?
I don't think you have to do that all the time. It also depends on the level of people. If you're like a super, super advanced person, then you probably do progression run for you. You probably don't have many easy runs. You don't have any easy long runs. It's either spice or progression run.
Okay.
But for somewhat intermediate advanced people, you switch between easy runs and spice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So progression run is harder than easy run, and some of the pace will be in the gray zone. However, it's because you're getting faster, faster, faster. It takes you out of the gray zone. So that I'm not too worried about that. But if you stay at the same pace in the gray zone, that's gonna be horrible.
Yeah, but we're talking at, you're going to have someone do those like once a week around, like they're not doing that for all their runs, right? That they go
No,
out there.
no,
Okay. I
no.
just want to be clear there.
One
Just in
or
case
zero.
someone was like, "Hey, these are more fun. Why don't I just do it every day? Like run like this." So you're either adding it in once a week or you're not adding it into the plan and the training. And then in respect to kind of this advanced marathon training we're talking about,
Mhm.
is this something that goes in phase 3, or is this something that you can even do from the beginning if you are very experienced and you've done these before?
Progression run, you can progression from different ranges, right? If the whole range is in the easy zone, you can do that in phase one, no problem. You just make it a little fun. If you progression aggressively, you progression into tempo pace, then you probably want to keep it in phase two, something like that. It's yes, progression run is still the pace at this particular for this particular goal. So you look at what pace you're going to be running, you'll be progressing, and then determine which phase is going to put into. I usually just put progression run into easy, stay in the easy zone, just because easy run can be boring, and then
Right.
progression that it can be fun. And if you run that slow enough, then the whole thing is an easy zone, and it it doesn't really matter.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. And that's what
mhm,
you had programmed for me last week. So again, just giving some real world examples here in context. Last week was a cutback week for me
mhm,
in terms of my long run, where the previous week I did 18 and then I cut back
mhm,
to, yeah, 10 to 12.
something like that.
And
Yeah.
then we made it a little tougher by doing a 7 mile progression run the
Mhm,
next day. So I was doing, a double digit long run, but again, it feels easier after running like 16, a couple 16s and an 18.
yep,
And you made the training slightly harder. You modified it
mhm,
by giving me 7 miles the next day, but you were saying in your mind, your decision making process was recoverability. The goal
yes,
of this week is to recover and cut back.
right,
So I want Duane to do this progression run all in his easy pace. So you gave
yes,
me like start at 11 and then you're
yeah,
just chopping off 10 seconds, where it was basically from 10-minute mile to 11 that I
yeah,
was trying to chop off 10 seconds with each mile. as opposed to if your goal was to, and your purpose was, hey, I want to challenge Duane a little bit more, then I'm sure you would have probably had me start at 10, right? And
Yeah.
go down to 9 minute pace. So I think,
Right.
again, like going back to your key principles we talked about earlier of purpose, and that purpose of last week was to make sure my body recovered from the
Yeah.
18 so I can hit this 18 with some spice this week and, feel healthy and like hit the tempo run that I did this morning. So again, guys, just giving you we're like giving you insight into Coach Lou's brain right now, right? And some of the things that we really look at from a coaching standpoint, because all of that, and hopefully you're seeing some of these intricacies we're talking about and certain variables. There's so many variables that are moving, right? And, don't just take one thing and be like, oh, Coach Lou does this, let me do that. Like, think about, like, is it right for you? Right? Like timing wise, and like where you are in your training, and are we building, or are we recovering, or are we cutting back? And so there are a lot of moving parts here. So just make sure you never take anything that we're saying out of context. Use it to learn, to grow, see where it implements into your training, and or work with a coach, right? Whether it is you work with us, we would obviously love that, and to guide you if you're the right fit. But any run coach, right? You working with a run coach is going to be better than you trying to just figure it out on your own and know how to manipulate those variables. Any other tips that we haven't covered? You shared a lot here, and we really got in depth, even a little deeper than I thought we'd get. But any other tips that you wanted to share that we didn't talk about, Coach Lou?
Listen to the body. Really, just listen to the body. Go with RPE. If we covered that before, we can drop the link as well. Listen to body. Don't overdo it. Not every workout is a race. You don't. Yeah, sometimes you get anxiety from people's Strava or Facebook and something. And one workout is not the whole thing. You look at the whole body, where you are at. And even if you're doing exactly the same workout, exactly the same pace, it means different for you. You want to train at your optimal pace for a specific purpose that aim at your weakness, so that you can improve most efficiently.
Well said. Well said. So, just to recap here, kind of tying this all together, guys, what Coach Lou really shared with you today is, who would benefit from advanced marathon training. So I really want you to critically think about, is this you? What are the key foundational principles to advanced marathon training? And I love that when we had this topic and Coach Lou and I were, discussing about, sharing this on the podcast and having it as kind of the stepping stone from like Coach Latoya's episode on marathon training for beginners. He really gave this a lot of thought. And I love, honestly, these 5 key principles that he talked about, and how we kind of started with that versus like, hey, this is what you do for weeks 1 through 6. This is what we do from 7 to 12. And hopefully we did a good job at tying in those principles to the phases when you're designing, because it's not only about a plan. And we get so many runners that reach out to us like, hey, I just want a plan. I just want a plan. Like, there are many variables that go into that plan, and whoever created that plan, right? They might not have the same 5 key foundational principles that Coach Lou has and that we talked about. Their mindset might be totally different. They might have been a super fast runner and they were a collegiate runner themselves. And they're like, hey, this has worked for me. I've been fast my whole life. And these are how you're going to get fast for the marathon. And it might not include these 5 principles that Coach Lou talked about. And I love how, you really were reflective in not only what has worked for you personally from being an adult onset runner who has had some really good success and, being a sub-3 marathoner in Boston. So you've had some, success yourself, but then also what you've tried with the clients you've worked with. You've had a lot of experience now coaching clients for really over 2 years now. And, what has worked? Like, what are the principles? What are the key things that has worked? And you're using your, coaching experience to make these decisions and to program and, come up with these key principles. So I just like value that so much. We talked about what the goal is of this advanced marathon training. We're trying to get that marathon pace faster and hold it for a longer period of time,
Yep.
because that's what you're going to do for the marathon. And we talked about the prerequisites, having that base training foundation. And then we really broke down those 3 phases, kind of phase 1, 2, and 3. And then we talked a little bit about progression runs. So
Right.
if you're listening to this and you have been struggling to get faster as a runner, you're not able to get that marathon time that you're really proud of. Honestly, my question to you and challenge is, are you ready to take control of your running and actually, get clarity so you cannot hit the wall during your race and you can feel strong and you can feel healthy, crushing the marathon.
Yeah.
You're going to see other programs that might really get you fast, but you might be limping into that race, and or you might need 3 months of PT after the race.
No.
Our mindset is not of that. And Coach Lou and our team have demonstrated time and time again now that, we can work with runners and get them to their running goals and not have to. I hear so much on like other running podcasts of like, run your marathon and then go get fixed and like
Oh
take 3
no.
months to recover and like go to PT, fix all the things that are broken. And I'm like, what kind of that makes no sense to me. But again, I'm a little biased because I'm a physical therapist. But if you want to actually feel strong and like run a fast race without being broken, and you can actually continue training after that, because like, let's be honest, we run for our mental release. Like
Right.
everyone, like stress reduction, like makes you feel good, right? Like I want to do that on a weekly basis, not like have to take 3 months off after my marathon. And, I think that was the big reason why I was so hesitant to run another one. But you've taught me through the principles we talked about today that it doesn't need to be like that.
It
So if
doesn't.
you guys really want, clarity on how to actually do this for your life, your busy schedule, the principles we talked about today, we would be honored to really guide and support you with our one-on-one, run coaching program. So if you want to see if you're a good fit, let's like hop on my schedule. We'll jump on a call, make sure you're a good fit. We only take on a handful of clients each month. Because again, this is very personalized attention that you get with this program. So, slots are limited. So if you're really ready to take action, you're kind of thinking of, hey, I want to run this marathon in, 4, 5, 6 months out, like schedule your call with me. Just go to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching and we'll jump on a call. Yeah, Coach Lou, this is always informative. As many times I do this, each and every time we get on here, I even learn something new. So thank you for coming on and not only educating me, but educating our community about how we can get faster for the marathon and, sharing your advanced marathon tips. I greatly appreciate it. And I know this is going to be super helpful for many runners out there.
I'm so glad to share. I love the community. From what I learned, what I experienced, I like to share with you so you don't have to go through the same mistake I made before. And I'm also learning. I'm learning today. I'm still learning all the time.
Absolutely. And that's part of the process. That's what I love about you and everyone on our coaching team. Like we're not going to be like, we always have the right answers. We're not going to, dictate to you, you must do this. We learn, we grow, we're reflective. We ask for our clients' input. And that's important too, because you guys know your body's best. We're not inside your body. We don't know what that
No.
recoverability, for example, right? We don't know how you're feeling recovery wise. We need to ask the right questions so we can gauge how you're feeling, so we can modify your plan based upon how you're feeling. But no, great point. And I love that we're continuing to learn, just like we want to be lifelong runners. We're going to be lifelong learners as well. So thank you for sharing. Thank you to the listeners for, jumping on here and, joining us in our running journey and, dedicating, your time to learn and grow and become a smarter, healthier runner. And, whether or not you listen to this on a Spark Healthy Runner YouTube channel, in our Healthy Runner Facebook group, or if you're on a run right now, listening to this on the podcast, hopefully you're crushing your run and making sure you have purpose for that run.
Yes.
We appreciate all of you. If you like this training, guys, then you will surely like the next. So if you're listening on the podcast, queue up episode 95 to learn all about Boston Marathon preparation and tips to hit a PR with Coach Lou, or just click the video that I have for you here on YouTube. So let's maintain a strong mind, a strong body, and just keep running. Until next time.
Good luck.